sure that if you have your, oh, there we go. We're live right now. So this is probably the most important conversation. Let me see. Let me start this again because I'm going to hit the record button. This is going to be broadcasted worldwide. And hopefully our conversation today will spread because this is what we need to focus on. We need to focus on solutions. We need to focus on commonality. So today is going to be the most important conversation we'll probably ever have in the classroom, which is to have an open and honest conversation about race relation that is loving. Okay, so if you're ready, let's fasten your seatbelts because it is time to dance. Ready? Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here. Right here, and when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friends. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time to the classroom, please know we've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, today, we have an incredible conversation with 3 people that have been hand-selected to be a part of this conversation. And so today, I want us, because I know many of us have comments or opinions of what the world should look like. But in my world, I want it to be about commonality. I want it to be about unity, love, respect. And I haven't seen that in the world lately. And so I'm hoping that this conversation today will spark this conversation worldwide. And I am incredibly honored to have NASA residents. I'm going to have them tell you a little bit about themselves, but former NASA astronaut and retired U.S. Navy Captain Winston Scott. We also have Nina Patterson, attorney Nina Patterson, or Esquire. And we also have Captain Cornelius Blue, and he's from Seminole County. Originally, we were going to have another individual. However, this is the person that God ordained for us to have today. This is the conversation that God wants us to have today. So I am thrilled that all 3 of them are here to discuss what it's like to be a Black American in the world today, or in the United States, in our nation, and what they want us to know and how we can go from the problem to being the solution. And I want to warn everybody, I want everybody to know that all the comments today must be kind and about solution. Anything or anything negative that you have to say will be deleted, especially if it is against any of my guests who are brave and taking a stand to share the good news about how we can promote unity in the world. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that we have Winston Scott, Cornelius Blue, and Nina Patterson in the classroom. Welcome, all of you, to the classroom.
Thank you. Good morning. Glad to be here.
Well, before we get started, so I want to, so that people can fall in love with you the way I just have, Winston, you've been a teacher in the classroom. Gosh, we go back a long time. And I reached out to you and I'm so grateful that you said yes to this. And so share a little bit about your background. And I want you to give us the perspective of what it's like, because we've had this conversation a long time ago too, what it was like to be a Black man growing with a lot of ambition in the United States. And now look at you today. So share a little bit about your background in that perspective.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. I'm actually a native Floridian, was born in Miami, Florida, born and raised in Miami, Florida. And today, incidentally, happens to be my birthday. I hadn't thought about bringing that up, but I'm probably the oldest person on the call.
Happy birthday!
I turned the big 70 today. I can't believe it. It sounds so old, but I tell you, I feel like I'm 25. Anyway, born and raised in Miami, Florida. And so I grew up in the 50s and 60s, graduated from high school in 68. So I went to segregated schools up through 9th grade, then schools integrated 10 through 12. So I have that perspective, what it's like to live in an all Black community and all Black schools. Then I went to Florida State University in Tallahassee, go Noles. And of course, that was a large, predominantly white institution, and entered that institution during the height of the civil rights movement between 68 and 72. War against the protests against the Vietnam War were going on. Civil rights protests were going on at that time. Left Florida State in 72, graduating in December 72, entered the Navy, 27 years in active duty as an officer and a naval aviator. I flew many different airplanes in the Navy, primarily at the F-14 Tomcat. Now, people may not be familiar with airplanes, but everybody's familiar with the movie with Tom Cruise, Top Gun. Well, that's what I did for real. The person in the movie was an actor. And then my last 7 years in the Navy were with NASA as an astronaut. So I flew 2 space shuttle missions, 9 days in orbit on board Endeavour, 16 days in orbit on board Columbia. I was a flight engineer and a spacewalker, so I performed 3 spacewalks. I can tell you what it's like growing up in segregated Miami up until living today in the United States as we are living today. And I'll reserve some more of those comments as we go through the program. But thank you.
Amazing. And thank you for your service and thank you for your courage today. I really appreciate you. Okay, we're going to switch. We're going to go boy, girl, boy, because there's so much division in the world. So I want to create so much unity. So Nina, let's start with you. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, I was honestly okay if you were to go to the captain next, because I don't want to follow the astronaut, but that's okay. That's okay. Not as impressive, but I can say, I want to start by saying I can only tell you what it's like to be a Black American from my perspective. From the offset, I don't want anyone to get the impression that any one Black American can give a definition of what it is to be a Black American. So, I mean, my history, I grew up born in 82. So I actually lived in a predominantly white neighborhood, went to predominantly white schools, went to Catholic school. From there, after some years of traveling the world, so to say, I became a mother. Eventually, in my 30s, I went back to law school, and here I am today. I'm going to keep it brief, and I'll save most of my life and all that for the discussion.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you for your courage to speak today. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Captain Cornelius Blue, thank you again for stepping in and sharing your perspective with all of us as well.
It's my pleasure. Of course, as you mentioned, Cornelius Blue is my name. Born and raised in the beautiful city of Sanford, Florida. This is where I'm from. This is the place I love. I love serving my community in Sanford West and the beautiful county called Seminole County. And I've been an employee now with some kind of sheriff's office since January 2006. I have a beautiful wife, and actually today we're celebrating 15 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
And 2 beautiful daughters that I'm very proud to be their father.
Very, very good. And so you're primarily, what are your duties in Seminole County currently?
So in Seminole County, I am the captain that oversees the division is called Seminole Neighborhood Policing, and I oversee all patrol functions, property, crime, detective functions, code enforcement, volunteer program, our motors unit, and a variety of other aspects such as our chaplains corps. And I'm also outside of just law enforcement itself. I'm also a pastor involved in my local church here.
Very good. And thank you again. Thank you for your courage and your service so that we can have the freedom to speak our mind, whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense. We have that freedom. So thank you for your courage for all of you. Okay, so let's start this conversation because there is a lot of anger and misinformation, and there's so much tension right now. How has this time in your life compared to growing up in America? So let's start with Winston, since you were the first one to throw the ball in the arena.
Well, this time is actually very similar to the late 60s, early 70s. I mentioned the protests against the Vietnam War were going on in the 68, 72 time frame when I was in college. Also, civil rights movement was going on. You know, we had unfortunately during that time frame seen the assassination, well, many years earlier, of John F. Kennedy. We saw the assassination of Martin Luther King, 1968 and so on. So that was all going on. I actually think the unrest during those years was a lot worse than it is now. This is pretty bad, but this is quite isolated to certain specific cities. But the unrest in the late 60s was much worse and much more widespread than it is now. So that's one big difference that I can say. If I back up before my college days, when I was growing up in Miami, and again, I lived in all Black neighborhoods, segregated schools, things were actually very peaceful. You didn't venture much beyond your own neighborhood. Everything you needed was right there. But we did have the freedom to go, for example, to downtown Miami. And I can remember growing up as a young kid, and my big sister would take my brother and I downtown, and we'd sit at the lunch counters and eat, and people were very friendly, very courteous. The days of segregated lunch counters were all gone when I grew up. So we could travel, and we were treated very, 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 very well. Things seemed to go down after that, and then we emerged on the other side, an even stronger, more diverse nation. We try not to go too long, but during my early Navy career as an officer, the returning Vietnam veterans were often symbolic of what some people did not like about America. And they took it out on the military. You know, yeah. People had gone to serve their country, and they came back and treated with disrespect. I'm a Vietnam era veteran, but I didn't go to Vietnam. Vietnam ended as I was going through training. But at the same time, I can remember as a young officer and newly minted pilot, they would tell us, don't wear your uniform in public, because your uniform made you a target of people who had this anti-military slant. Well, that's changed nowadays, and people have a lot of respect for the military. But so throughout my career, I was almost always the only African-American in my unit, the only African-American pilot in my squadron, for example. And unfortunately, that still hasn't changed over the years. There are very, very few of us minorities that make up aviation in general, but particularly U.S. naval aviation. Mm-hmm. I have a son on active duty right now in the Navy. He's a captain, by the way, which tells you how old I am. But he's a Navy captain, fighter pilot. He's the commanding officer of his unit. So I can think back on times when things were segregated. I could sit here and point out all kinds of bad things that happened to me. But I can honestly say that America, the beauty of America is that America changes, and America has changed. We've gotten better over the years. We have some difficult things going on right now, but in general, things are so much better than they used to be, and they continue to get better all the time. And I think it's through dialogues like we're having today with you, Lillian, and with our other guests, that we continue to grow, understand each other, and we continue to move things forward. I'll stop right there, and then we'll.
No, I love that. And I would love for maybe Cornelius, if you'd like to continue that, if you can, if you want to add or say anything about this, because, you know, Winston mentioned the uniform. And right now, the uniform for the police officer is under attack. And so can you identify with that? Is there a difference? Can you relate? I mean, what is your perspective?
Great question. And, I've been doing this job now going on 15 years. And, I hear a lot of stories from my more senior partners that work in this career field. And you see how law enforcement has evolved over time. And let me first start by saying that I recognize that law enforcement wasn't a pretty career to be a part of back in the day, if you will. Law enforcement was seen as those individuals that will control slaves, hunt down slaves. They will all the time work on the plantations or with slave owners to make sure slaves stays in check. Or when a slave escapes, they'll be the ones with the dogs and the crew to go out and locate and find. So law enforcement has a history, but as Captain Scott mentioned, we've come a long way as a country, and yet we still have a long ways to go, but we're making strides. I think what we're seeing in today's age is a community of people that want to see more change, want to see more progressive change. And I, for one, I want to see more change. We talk about reform and all of these things. You will be surprised as to how many law enforcement officers want to see that same change take place. And I think that because of the incidents like the George Floyd's, and let's go back to Rodney King in the 90s, right?
Yeah,
because of those incidences, it really puts a stench on what we have accomplished over the many, many, many years. And unfortunately, we live in a society that, media oftentimes only focus on, put a big spotlight on the incidents that are tragic.
Yeah.
And that's just so unfortunate. And it paints a picture that's oftentimes not
Balanced.
the best,
Yeah.
is off balance. And, not to even add that the majority of law enforcement are wonderful people. We have over 800,000 law enforcement officers in the country, and there's a minute number of law enforcement officers that go rogue. But the picture is painted as if they're all horrible and is off balance. One moment you see officers being attacked, next moment you see officers not being attacked. And I want to be one with my community. I want my community to be one with me, because I recognize we can't get it all done by ourselves. We need each other. And I'll say this, and pass this mic, if you will. Coming up in the community I came up in, it was unpopular in my household, my family. When I say household, I'm talking about distant relatives, close relatives. For me to even consider going in this field, I was raised in the Goldsboro community of Sanford, and I would see oftentimes my uncles being chased by the police. I seen dogs sled on them, and I had I honestly I hated cops for a long time as a child, until I became to know better. And my grandmother was the one that really changed my mind. Now I share this story because in 1990 of December she passed away. And a couple of days before she passed away, I was in her bedroom at the hospital, and I told her I was going to make her proud. And it clicked in me that I wanted to be one of the first officers in my family. I never imagined I'll amount to where I am today, but I want to do that because I want to bring change to my community and represent my community, be a reflection of my community, bring hope to my community. So there's a history here. What's going on now? I'm not surprised by it, because what has happened is completely unjust, and the system needs to be revamped. We need to correct a lot of things. And unfortunately, it's people like me that have to stand in between the gap and enforce the laws that are established by our politicians. And so we're put in a bad situation, but it's fine because I signed up for this. But we need law enforcement officers that have a great balance about themselves, that understands that we are dealing with human beings and not robots, and everybody's life is very valuable.
Can I jump in? I know Nina hadn't talked yet, but I'm going to jump in. I'll be quick so we can get to
No,
Nina.
no, you're welcome to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I grew up, again, back in the segregated Miami, we were taught to respect the police. And we were proud of our Black police officers because in those days, the Miami Police Department was just beginning to integrate. And I'm not sure, but I believe the Black police officers only patrol the Black community and whites patrol the white community. But I can remember Officer Hill, Officer Portier, Officer Frank Taylor, Officer Harcourt Clark. I remember those names. These are Black police officers, and we revered them, we respected them, and we wanted to be like them. And some of my contemporaries, upon graduating from high school, enrolled in the police academy. As a matter of fact, my brother's a couple of years younger than me, is retired deputy sheriff from Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow.
So we were taught to respect police officers and to cooperate with them, and because they were a part of our community and they were our friends. The police would drive by and we would yell, "Hey, buddy," and the police would wave back at us and smile. And so things, I believe that today, even though there's a lot of noise, a lot of anti-police noise being made, it's by a loud minority of people. I believe the majority of people in this country, no matter what color you are, respect the police, and we respect law enforcement, and we want good law enforcement. The bad apples in every group, doesn't matter where you go. They're bad apples in the military, bad apples in the ministry.
Yes.
Bad apples in the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. But the majority, 99.9999% of our of our officers are good people trying to perform service to our country. I think it's up to people like us to show support for our police department, because without law and order, you have nothing. Law and order is fundamental.
Chaos, and that's what's happening right now, is that they're just focusing on the chaos. But there are people like us that really want to focus. We can hook into the chaos and we can hook into the anger, but that's what they want. We want to step back and say, this is not what is going to heal my body. This is not what's going to heal the nation. And I just want to add, before we get Nina, you're next. I want to add that I loved listening to your perspective, Captain Blue and Captain Scott. The different perspective where you came up in a family that honored Winston, that honored police. And Cornelius, you grew up in a family that thought they were all slave drivers. And so isn't that amazing how both of you are on the same side today? And so that is what shifting our perspective and trying to understand the other individual and where they're coming from is what's so crucial in today when we're being fed hate and division. So with that in mind, Nina, you and I have had conversations about ancestry, and you have studied slavery like no one else I know. And so when you heard Cornelius talk about how that was the perspective of a police department today, it seems like we're trying to go backwards to, instead of moving forwards to a solution, that the media is trying to push us back and say, we're all divided. There's a huge problem, when both Winston and Cornelius are saying the problem is just like maybe 1%, not the 99%. So what would you like to share? What's your perspective?
I keep hearing this the saying about the bad apples, and I'm not the oldest one here, but I am old enough to remember that bad apples, one bad apple, a few bad apples, spoil the whole bunch. And while that's not fair to all the good officers, and I've said, I will be the first to admit that I have had interactions with law enforcement, and probably my interactions are probably some of the, under the circumstances, better than most. Was I raised to be a fan of law enforcement? Not at all. Would I say that the idea of them being slave drivers, I would say those bad apples that you see today that we're complaining about, those are those people that I would say, in my view and the view of many other people, that are perpetuating the slave driver. And to say, I hear people say the police officers are under attack. I don't agree. I don't think that putting a spotlight on individuals who are behaving badly and calling out their behavior is an attack, no more so than looking at a criminal and say, hey, your behavior's wrong, you need to change. I feel that the Black community and maybe either of you can speak to this, for years has felt under attack. I remember as a child, I would watch the news, and I remember anytime a crime was committed by a Black man, the news made sure that you knew that it was a Black man that committed a crime. And I remember as a child, if I listened and I didn't hear the race of the individual, I could suspect that it's probably not a Black person that committed the crime. But however, race was never mentioned. I feel like we're in a world now where that kind of dichotomy is flipped. Now you hear about the bad acts of the cops, and maybe it's into some people, because you're hearing about the bad acts of the cops and you're looking, and it's always been the perspective, well, when you're a criminal and you have confrontation with the cops, whatever precedes is what you get. And at some point, we have to hold law enforcement to a higher standard. They cannot be permitted to be judge, jury, and executioner. Now, when we say it's just a few, it's 99, so it's like 0.01%. That 0.01% is destroying it then for the 99.9%. Because when you have 0.01% murdering people on the streets, sitting on their neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, then it's going to get the kind of negative attention. Just like a child that's misbehaving. They may be well-behaved 99.9% of the time, but if you take them to your friends or you take them to an outing and they have a horrible breakdown for whatever reason, people are gonna say, hey, that child's out of control. And then that's the stigma that, that you have to overcome, that child has to overcome. And that's unfortunate. I had a very similar upbringing as Mr. Scott. Like I said, I was often the only Black child, and then female at that. I often felt ostracized, and that did have an impact on me and how I viewed the world. And I can only imagine what that's like on a scale of being a community. And maybe, as today, we don't see so many Black cops patrolling Black neighborhoods. You see people that are not from the neighborhoods, that do not understand what the people are going through, that aren't able to say, hey, this isn't, what I'm seeing isn't the community, this is a few bad apples. You get some people coming into the community that treat the whole bunch like the bad apples. And where is the recompense for the community that is receiving this kind of treatment?
Okay, I really appreciate that, because I wanted to take out some things that I'm picking up from this. And it seems like, is the problem the individual, or is the problem the reporting of the individual? Is the problem that you were able to only hear the negatives? Like if whenever when a plane explodes or crashes, the media leads with that. But we have more car accidents that happen. And can you imagine, every time there was a car accident, the media reported on it, nobody would want to drive. So though I want to focus on the media right now, because as a reporter, I wrote 4 years for Florida Today, and I also have been doing the classroom since 2011. Anytime I post on love and kindness, I get a few little posts. But if I post on not wanting to wear a mask, or having someone that has a perspective, I get hundreds. So the conditioning is, if it bleeds, it leads. So who do we blame here? Do we blame the media because we're sucked into the media? Or do we believe that there is a problem with the 1%, and let's honor the 99%? And Cornelius, I would like for you to address that.
So very good point. And I want to say Nina, she brought up some very great points that brought some flashbacks to me as well.
Okay.
And I would tell you, the 99 that are doing a great job, I mean, in my community, the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, we have a fantastic group of deputies and civilians that come to work every single day, and they just want to come to work, serve their community, and be providers for their families. And you may find in any law enforcement agency one or so every now and then that may not represent that agency as well. And you know what? It's people like myself and others that wear this uniform and a community to hold those people accountable that misrepresent what we stand for. Absolutely. And this is the problem that I think has been identified. When you have a law enforcement agency that sit back and is tolerable of bad officers, the bunch is bad. That's the bad bunch.
Yeah. And
I can say I refuse to work for an agency that will sit back and allow racism and division be caused in the community. I wouldn't want to be a part of that agency. I wouldn't want to work for anyone that believes in that, because at the end of the day, I know that it's probably going to affect the people that look like me more than anyone else. And I have family that live in this community. I have friends that live in this community. And I don't want any of the people that I love dearly to be harmed by a bad cop. Yes, the media, in my opinion, should be held accountable, because there are some misleading stories. One of the worst things I hate, in my position as a captain, as you can imagine, I receive complaints here and there from community members, and thank God for the body camera, right? And we have body cameras in our organization, in-car cameras, and there have been more complaints cleared by the body camera and in-car camera than just a regular witness standing on the side of the road. And oftentimes we're dealing with people that are, of course, upset, may have lost a job, didn't get paid, children sick, or whatever the case may be. And we're really the sponge. We get the phone call, we respond to this incident, we're dealing with it, and we become the sponge. All the anger goes toward us. Why? Because we represent a system that hasn't always favored, and a system that the majority say needs to change, and we should always be evolving, because time brings about change in everything.
Yes. But
the media paints a picture, just like when you hear certain rap music, when I came up, certain movies, certain different events, it painted a picture. I was talking with someone the other day, and they mentioned to me, said, when you think of a terrorist, what's the first thing that pops in your mind? And I won't say, but I'm sure we all right away, we develop a photo in our mind what we think a terrorist looks like. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, anyone who goes against the norms of the community commits anarchy, is a terrorist to that community. Mm-hmm. And it's unfair that everybody gets labeled because of the color of your skin, the uniform you wear, the type of clothes you wear. And this is why we need a diverse community. We need law enforcement to reflect the community in which they serve. And I can tell you, the one thing I'm proud about our agency and our community, we're hand in hand. Now, I'm not saying that, we're completely perfect, because anytime you have human beings, you're going to see error somewhere. All right. But, we do a good job working hand in hand, and we are not afraid to double down on our practices and try to become better and iron out whatever wrinkles that may be. But until we see a worldwide movement of law enforcement officers dealing with issues, doubling down, not afraid to call out bad cops, until we see the media change the narrative and not be so quick to cause fear and panic, we're going to see this door continue to swing back and forth, as it has for years and years prior to 2020.
Now, I'd like to, and absolutely what Nina was talking about is absolutely needs to be looked at. And I believe that just recently there is a reform bill that was signed to help police officers deal with these kinds of crises, because you guys are put into all that anger. I'm glad that you mentioned this, because we are a barometer of energy. We are energy, and we send out this energy. And these, what people don't understand is that if I am around someone who is hateful or evil, or it affects my body because they're sending out that energy as well. And when you guys are called out to any situation, you guys are the receiver of it. So thank you so much for showing us that that is, we have to be aware that you guys are receiving that. And that training, do you believe that that training, that you guys need more training, that you need more help? What is it that police officers need today? Because right now they're talking about defunding the police. They're talking about, you have organizations, chanting, things that I don't even want to repeat here today because it's disrespectful and dishonoring of the organization that you represent. So what do you believe that this is something that you guys need right now?
So you can never deny the fact that, I mean, we all should continue in our training and education. Once you stop learning, why not just stop living? We should always be evolving regardless of what field you're in, right? So that is, something we're always looking forward to, new ideas, new things to bring about a better working environment, a more equipped personnel. Also, too, as it pertains to the thing about defunding police. So I know that means a lot of different things to different people. And what I picked up on the most, what seems to be more realistic, is that the community is saying that there are a lot of issues that law enforcement officers deal with that they shouldn't have to deal with.
Correct.
Because the truth is, anytime you get a law enforcement officer on the scene, you're bringing a gun to that scene, regardless if it's just for a civil dispute or something that doesn't necessarily involve law enforcement interaction. He shows or she shows up to that scene. And the majority of the time, we know that majority of scenes don't even equate to the level of what we saw with Mr. George Floyd. However, when we talk about defunding police, I can tell you some things. Let me tell you what we're doing here, what we've been doing here for a long time. And this is why I'm proud to be with some kind of sheriff's office, because we have a civilian section within the sheriff's office that respond to a lot of the things that the world is really asking for now. So this is really our culture. This is one of our norms. And because of that, we don't just send law enforcement out to everything that DCF workers should be dealing with. Why? Because we have CPS. We have juvenile intervention officers that are all civilian. We have various social work within the sheriff's office. The majority of our organization are civilian employees. We have to be, again, together and understand that if we're not as one, we can't accomplish, because we can't be the one-stop shop for every single thing. Now, do we respond to these things? Absolutely, yes. Do we come out if we're asked to assist a juvenile officer? Absolutely, yes. But I want to say this. I really want to drive this in the ground as much as I can. If you are wearing a badge and a uniform and represent law enforcement, regardless of where you go, what type of call, and you don't conduct yourselves in a fashion that represent the community, you don't need to be a part of this career. You really don't. And I think it's really a shame that the defunding the police have the narrative that, well, if a cop goes, something may just go horribly wrong. Because I know who I am, I know what I stand for, and I know that I'm going to use the best judgment that I can. Even if I wasn't a cop and I had my children with me, I'm going to do everything I can to safeguard my family. And it's the same thing as law enforcement officer. Although the majority of Seminole County I'm not related to, or they're not even my kids, but I feel that same responsibility to protect them and serve them to the best of my ability. So really, you have bad parents in this field that, get a gun and a badge, and they're out supposedly, I guess, trying to represent us, and they're really bad actors. But again, the majority of us we're very good people.
Bottom line, parents, we are responsible for our children, and I appreciate that. So before I want to shift again, and I want to shift to solutions. But before I shift, I want to again thank these wonderful teachers today in the classroom. But I want to encourage you, because this is about a responsible conversation.
Before you shift, though.
Okay. Well, I don't want to. Okay, go ahead, because I wanted to talk about my sponsors.
Okay. Yeah, but I want to chime in on the media thing here. I do think we have a media today, and maybe the media's always been that way, that would jump on and harp on the most negative aspect of a story that they could grab, even when it's not true.
Correct.
You know, what we saw with George Floyd, for example, was a terrible tragedy which should not have happened. But what should have occurred is the media should have taken an even keeled, logical, and accurate tone and let us know that this is a single isolated incident. And like Nina said, the individual should be held accountable. But what did not happen is we crucify everybody because of what this individual did. The individual has been held accountable. He's been arrested. He's going to be put on trial for murder. So we've evolved beyond the old days when people would point out and say a black person did this or a white person did that. A crime was committed. It was a black person. But what the media does is they grab hold of this narrative and they blow it up out of proportion, and they really put out a false narrative. So for example, if you look at the statistics, last year in 2019, only 9 black people were shot by white police officers. Okay, and 9 is too many, but let's put it in perspective. There were more whites shot by police officers than there were blacks. Black people shot more police officers than police officers shot black people. Black people killed each other more than police officers killed black people. So when you put it in perspective,
and if we could we?
Nina, yes, no.
Okay.
Can you please hold on? Please hold on.
So my point is the media has fostered a conspiracy that all over America, police officers have to shoot black folks. And that's simply untrue. The truth is that, again, I keep saying it, the majority of police officers are good people. The bad apples should be dealt with on an individual basis. Where there's a bad cop, he or she needs to be dealt with just like a bad military officer, a bad minister, a bad teacher, or whatever. It needs to be onesies and twosies, but the media plays a big role in blowing this whole thing up out of proportion. It gives us a false narrative and we act on that narrative. Okay.
I appreciate your perspective. I know, Nina, you disagree, and you have every right to disagree, and we can continue that disagreement after we do the classroom. But if you want to write it down and we can go back to it with a teacher's pet conversation, I want to encourage all of you, if you guys have any questions or any comments that you would like to add to this, that is positive, that is constructive, please feel free to share. I want to also ask you to go to whenyounneedafriend.com, become a subscriber of the classroom, and like and follow me on social media, as well as look at some of the events that we have coming up, because we have some incredible things happening. I'm not going to go into too much time because this conversation is so important. And I want to make sure that before we leave today, that we have a grasp of the solution. And so with that in mind, I would like to start with Nina. Nina, I want to, like, if you were to be able to say, let's put the pulse on the problem. Like we've talked about, perhaps the media is the problem. Perhaps the bad cops are the problem. Perhaps, but what is the solution? Because we keep talking about the problem, but what can we do to create awareness and love and peace so that we can have conversations like this and come up with win-win, win-win. And so how can we come up with win-win where everybody feels heard and honored?
I have to just real quick reflect and say, he mentioned that more Black people kill more Black people than cops. I also want to, it is always a narrative that's left off. More white people killed more white people than maybe cops killed white people as well. I think it's the way we frame the narrative, the solution. And we put a lot on the media, and I don't think we're any individual household, human being, anybody that has a cell phone, a laptop takes enough responsibility. Because like you said, if it leads, it bleeds. That means they're only going to give you what you're asking for. So if everyone's sitting here and, you watch your outlets, and maybe Captain Scott has his and Captain Blue has his, and I have my favorite outlets that I trust. But like you said, if it leads, it bleeds. If the story doesn't capture you, if the headline doesn't capture you, then you're not going to click. You're not going to turn the page. You're not going to go to that website. And it's going to take some individual accountability. I mean, the media will only put out there what you'll bite. And if they're not hitting the stories that say live, love, laugh, then either they're just saying they're taking it in and scrolling on, or there's no need to comment, or it's just uninteresting. So that's up to the human beings and all of us to make the decision that this isn't who we are. This isn't what we're going to feed in, no matter what the source of the media is. Because I would honestly say possibly that what I watch are, some may accuse it of being very negative. I may say that, some of the things you say or see leave out part of the story that I think would be very viable to helping you understand where I'm coming from. Asking human beings to be unbiased is asking them to not be human beings. We see it with the media, we see it with the police, we see it with our teachers, and we see it with the students. Bias is human. Asking a human to give the whole story, like even with he's saying that Mr. Floyd is an isolated incident. I would say it's absolutely not an isolated incident. We've seen multiple times where chokeholds have been used on unarmed individuals. We've seen where people fleeing felons or whatever they are, have been gunned down. I don't think we're understanding so much that it's not that it's happening, it's the manner in which it's happening. I think anyone can respect someone defending their own life. What the hardship is that the community is having a hard time understanding, how do you take a life that is, a person is subdued? And I think what the problem is that we're being too, I'm going to say kind of basic. It's like you're saying, oh, he's being brought to justice. We understand that. We are not upset just at Mr. Floyd's passing. It's, I think, the young man, Elijah, and Aurora that was killed, a young man who playing violin. It's the fact that every individual can say, hey, it's a few bad apples, but I have, I think, a very respectable fear of those few bad apples, because I don't want to be a victim of the few bad apples. And if everyone could understand from that perspective, it's, hey, we hear you that it's bad apples, fine, and we can even respect that. But where our problem is that you have a system that covers for the bad apples. And we're asking you to address that part. And we feel that there's a lot of pushback where you're not hearing what we're saying. The problem is you're only feeling attacked, and not any you specifically, but people are feeling attacked because this is being brought to light. And you're saying that the person, the individual that we're fighting for, or that prompted this response, isn't good enough for people to have this kind of reaction. And we're saying all lives are threatened when this can happen. And we see justice in this instance, but in many instances we have not. And that's what we want to see changed.
Okay,
and
how, Nina? Because
we
already know the problem. What is the solution?
The solution, and that's what I'm saying. You have to hear me. You have to hear that what my actual fear is, and you have to try to pull back away from feeling attacked. Taking 12 2-minute clips and assigning that to the entire movement. You have to be willing to unhear some of the things that even you have been told, or individuals have been told by their media sources, because we're not all hearing the same thing. We're not all hearing the same conversation when we look into our media sources. And the solution, is there a solution? I don't think 3 people on, or even 4 people on a panel can give you a solution to such a problem that has been going on since 1619.
I understand, but we are all, if each one of us thinks of ourselves as the solution, it's going to be more than 4 people. There are people listening all over the world today. And so if we could do one thing, Nina, what would be the solution?
I would think you'd have to hear. You're going to have to hear in a way that makes you uncomfortable. You're going to have to hear what appears to be an attack, and you're going to have to really shut off who you are and everything that you've known, and listen to the attack as information. And I don't know how to get people to do that necessarily.
Great. Well, that's great. Well, this is part of the conversation. And if we could continue listening to one another, perhaps we can come to some form of action plan, a call to action. So let's change. And thank you, Nina, for sharing. And for those of you who we'll address any question after the class. So if you have any questions, we'll address after the podcast. Okay, Captain Cornelius Blue, would you like to share what you would like to see as the solution?
You know, that's a very loaded question, and we'll be forever day and night is talking about that. But let me say this. I know who I am as an individual outside of this uniform and as well as in this uniform. It's per the individual. You know, we have a generation, regardless of skin tone, that has lost its fear of respect of God and also of fellow mankind.
Okay.
And I believe until we get back to a level of respect and being comfortable in our own skin and knowing who we are, and oftentimes I've been accused of downplaying scenarios because I'm not as emotionally traumatized as others. And I would tell people, I'm not saying that I'm not bothered by it, but I refuse to be entrapped in a world where know that I am free. But that also comes with me just knowing who I am as a person and what my faith is. And that doesn't excuse me for not being a part of the situation to bring a solution either. And there's such a pull right and left as to what everybody thinks the solution is, as what Nina alluded to, you know, just us four on this call right now. We would never get to that. And honestly, we're always going to have some sort of issue to come up. Why? Because we have human beings that walk around every single day, and there's going to be something to occur somewhere that will set us back. And if we don't kind of recognize who we are as a person and have respect and love for each other, we're going to always have issues. And I'm here to tell you that not that we should not strive for better, but we're going to have issues, but it's going to be up to people like us to address them quickly, work on a system that's fair and equal for everybody, regardless if you're in uniform or not. We have a long ways to go, and I'm not sure if I'll live to see that.
I hope you do. I hope we do. I hope we do. And so before I move on to Winston Scott, Nina, if anybody wants to follow you on social media as an attorney, where can they go?
You can go to my website at nplegalhelp.com, and you can click on any of the tabs. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
Very good. Very good. And the same thing with me. You go to whenyouneedafriend.com and follow me on there. Is there, Captain Blue, is there anything, I know that we're going to be talking about an initiative in Seminole County, but is there a website that you can give before we go into the teacher's classroom, the teacher's pet classroom?
Sure. SeminoleSheriff.org is my company site, our sheriff's office. We have a ton of information about our office, the great work that our sheriff is doing, and the members of the sheriff's office is a part of as well. And there, I can be contacted through that site as well. My information is listed as well.
Great. Thank you so much. And Winston, what do you think we can do as far as each one of us so that we can move closer to a solution?
I think the points that were just made by Nina and Captain Blue are very pertinent. I think what Nina said is accurate, is that we each as individuals have to open up our thinking and be willing to listen to other people, to be willing to listen to conversations that make us uncomfortable. And we have to be sure that we look at ourselves. It's very easy for me to sit and say, you ought to listen, but I have to open my mind and listen to things that make me uncomfortable. And that goes into what Captain Blue was saying. It's a personal responsibility. Each one of us as individuals have to look at ourselves first and open up our own minds, our own hearts, our own ears to what's being said, even the things that make us uncomfortable. And one last thing I think Captain Blue said is really resonant with me. It's respect. You know, what we see, I think part of the fundamental problem in America is lack of respect. You know, we don't respect anything anymore. When I grew up years ago, we were taught respect. If you went to church, you respected the minister, the deacons. If you went to school, you respected the teacher. I respect you as the host of this program. This is your program. I give you a certain amount of respect. When the police officer's in the street, I give them a certain amount of respect. We live in a world today where it's kind of, I do what I want to do. And we have no respect for anything. And respect comes from inside. You respect yourself first, and therefore you can give respect to everybody else. And if every one of us in this country would look at that, getting back to that level of respect, then we can begin to dialogue, exchange ideas, and begin to move society forward.
I am just in cloud nine. I've been wanting to do this conversation for a long time, have this conversation for a long time. You know, I can't give you the perspective of Captain Scott or Captain Blue or Attorney Patterson. I cannot give you their perspective, but I can give you my perspective. And we see in others who we are. And I believe that we've lost respect for self, and we've lost respect for God. We've lost that reverence for it. And that's why we're starting the event, the New Truth series, the Book of Revelations with Dr. Lorraine Day. I'm really excited about that. And you can go to whenyounneedafriend.com to learn more about that. But we need to return. You know, we are listening to, and I hate pointing the finger, because, you know, this classroom is all about responsibility. It's the registered server's mark is you can take a pill or you can take responsibility. It's not that I'm against the pill, but I believe that we can do things to change our life, our lifestyle. And when our eyes are focused on the wrong God, things can happen. Things happen that we call free will, but I call consequences. There are consequences to our behavior. And so I would like to add here that if we just turn off mainstream media and read whatever we want to read once, put it down and bring something balanced into our life, perhaps we won't overreact to the 1%. Rather, we will do a call to action for that 1% that's doing that. And by the way, I've got the I am 99, where the 1% is the 1% of the 1% is controlling the 99%. So if you go to I am 99 on Facebook and join that movement, we are trying to find commonality with one another. And we are trying to figure out two ways that we're doing right now. One of them is Ho'oponopono, which are 4 statements. And you can check that out as well, which is a statement that says, I am sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. And we're doing this, it's a prayer with 4 statements. And we're doing this for the world, for our communities, for our law enforcement officers, for our police, for our political representation as well. And then the last one is the Bible study of the Book of Revelation with Dr. Day. So we just started the conversation here. For those of you who are listening on podcast, we're going to continue a little bit longer, because I do want to talk about an initiative with the Trayvon Martin that was triggered with Trayvon Martin in Seminole County, and maybe even have a even more dialogue. But please feel free to always join us on Facebook or YouTube at whenyounneedafriend.com. You can just click there and it'll take you to all my social media. We only have about 2 minutes left. Nina, I'll let you be the final word.
Thanks for the heads up. I would just like to close by saying, as we were speaking, it is about individual responsibility. And I think that some of the people that have been enjoying a lot of freedom of not having to reach across the aisle and hear people that have been oppressed. It's hard to say that this was, people are losing respect and lost, Christianity, when people haven't actually seen. There are whole communities and generations of people that have not seen this Christianity, that have not received this respect that you speak of. And it would be my hope that people would understand that this is where a lot of this angst and anger and frustration is coming from. A lot of the things that we have enjoyed, and a lot of us have enjoyed, other people have not. They have not seen this America that we speak of. And that's what a lot of people need to understand, that those opportunities, that love, that respect has not been enjoyed by every community in the US.
Yes, and thank you so much for that. And the bottom line is that every solution starts with love. Every solution starts with love. Thank you, Captain Scott, Captain Winston Scott, Captain Cornelius Blue, and Attorney Nina Patterson for this wonderful conversation. We're going to continue the conversation after the music ends. And I just want to remind you that we'll be waiting right here for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and all the gang wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job. Here we go.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Thank all of your students, teachers, pets in the classroom. We're going to continue just a little bit longer. How much time do you have, Captain Blue, before you need to go to your meeting?
They're about done, so I have another one at 10 o'clock. So
okay, well, we'll be done before then. I promise you'll be able to make that meeting. Okay. So I want to thank all of you. I want to thank, because unless you make a comment, I don't even know that you're there. But Stacy, thank you so much, and Heidi for responding, and Gary. Let's see, Wendy, thank you so much for all of you for coming on and making yourself present in the classroom. I want to give Winston an opportunity to share anything that you want to share that maybe you wanted to say during the time that we were together in the classroom, but didn't have the opportunity. Maybe you wrote it on a note and you'd like to add anything right now, if you'd like to do that, and all of us as well.
No, just that it was a good conversation. I'm glad that you hosted it, and appreciate the input from Nina and from Captain Blue. It's the kind of conversation that we need to have more of. If many more people can get together and have these kind of conversations, and then we listen to each other and get each other's perspectives, then we'll all begin to come together and move forward. So that's kind of just an editorial comment. Mm-hmm. It's very, very good. Glad to have been able to participate.
I'm glad you agreed to do that. Have you seen that even in the Black community, there's a division about this topic, or is it just white, Black?
I think there's a division within the community, but I think part of the community suppresses another part of the community. One thing that really disturbs me, and this is within the African American community, that if you don't say certain things or think a certain way, then you get ostracized and crucified, as if all Black people have to think exactly alike. Black people are just like other people. We have a diversity of ideas. Some things I will agree with Captain Blue on. There are probably some things I disagree. Some things I will agree with Nina on. Some things I disagree. We're human beings within the Black community. We're different, just like we're different races. So that's one thing that I noticed within the African American community, and the same words apply. We ought to be able to sit down, talk to each other, listen to each other's different perspectives, and we learn from each other. And by disagreeing and learning and communicating, we come together, and then we raise the entire community. So
very good, very good. Thank you very much. Anything else you want to add?
You want to be here all day?
No. I mean, is there anything that you felt that you wanted?
I'm kidding.
No. Is there anything that was specific that you marked down and you say, I really want to add this, and just the opportunity didn't happen? I just want to give everybody an opportunity to share.
No, again, a very, very good hour, and I appreciate being able to participate.
Thank you. Okay, so Captain Cornelius Blue. Oh, actually, let me shift to Nina. Is there anything that you want to say? I'm going to unmute you now because I heard some, yes, if you would like to share anything.
You can go ahead and I want to hear what the captain, I don't want to make him late for his meeting.
Okay.
His next meeting.
Okay, Captain Blue, you're on the hot spot, because I really do want to talk about the Trayvon Martin initiative, or you had shared that you wanted to talk about that today.
Yeah, well, so what I was going to reflect on is that, what happened then was horrific, and it really devastated our community, our country, our world, in fact. And having to walk through that wasn't easy. It was very difficult. And as you all know, it happened right here in Sanford, Florida. There were a lot of misconceptions about, what exactly happened, as far as if the guy that killed Trayvon was law enforcement or former law enforcement, or was he a part of the neighborhood watch? And we all know that Zimmerman was a part of the neighborhood watch of that community. But it really hurt us because, again, I think this is a part where it goes back to a system that we are a part of. We are part of, because now we see where many believe that the courts failed, the laws of the state failed, because the young man is no longer amongst us. It shouldn't have never happened, for one, but regardless of what we think or believe, I'm here to tell you that many believe that the system was not fair. And I don't think that you can just be clear cut about every single thing. But, an author once said this, and I share this oftentimes with people. An author once said, I can't remember who it is right now, but when the waves roll back, you'll see who's naked. And I think sometimes when we have storms, when we have this pandemic, have worldwide issues or local issues that spring up, when the waves roll back, you'll find out who's with you, who's not. You'll find out where the issues are. You'll find out, you start really seeing the heart of people come out when the heat is turned up. And I think, that situation brought out a lot of things that needed to come out, because, again, change started to happen. Remember, Trayvon was that incident really sparked a worldwide change. And unfortunately, it had to be Trayvon, or anybody for that matter, for us to identify that we need change. We need it now. But it happened. And since then, we've seen reform. We've seen us evolving. And again, what different movements are asking for now and what have you, regardless of what people think about Black Lives Matter or Promise Keepers, etc. There's a lot of merit to a lot of things that are being said. And I don't agree with everything everybody says, but I try to balance it and I try to listen. As Nina said, we need to be able to listen to each other and understand each other's pain. As I was mentioning earlier about, respect and individuality. And this is what I really don't like the most about being on the time interview, because you don't have enough time to go in detail. But I know that I'm not absent of trouble. I'm not absent of being a victim. And I'm in uniform. I mean, I'm not absent of being profiled. I'm not absent of that, but I try not my best to be free here in my mind. I try my best to be free, because I understand that there's power there, that my emotions are there. Everything that I remember, they're in my mind. And I try to have that liberty in my mind to really move about and have and experience the joys that I believe that are determined for me and my family. So these incidents happen, and when they happen, it has a tendency to really throw those waves back, and you start being able to see folks who we thought were once perhaps legitimate, but they've proven not to be so. And again, I think it's more so perspective than anything else. And I'll even go as far as saying this, honestly, I know I'm going to criticize for this, but I can't even say that the guy that sat on George's neck is a racist. I can't say that. I don't know that to be factual. I think the act itself rests under the umbrella of racism. I think that at some point, all of us can be accused for whatever act we do as racism. There's some things we need to be able to deal with. I think the biases, as Nina mentioned earlier, are a big issue, and we confuse that between racism and implicit or implicit biases and what have you. So I can't say that he was, but I can tell you this: the man was dead wrong. He was absolutely wrong for what he had done. And regardless if that was a white man or female or Asian or what have you, that he would be wrong. And I would like to think, if we can roll back the time, and I would like to think that he'll have a different perspective before he made the decision. I would hate to even think that this guy enjoyed doing what he did to Mr. Floyd. I mean, I'm sitting there at my table. My wife is showing me, hey, baby, look at this. And I'm crying. I'm yelling at that thing, get off his neck, get off his neck, you get off his neck. And so can I just say this one other thing regarding that?
Absolutely. You can say whatever you want.
You know, you hear this, you have the community standing out there yelling, hey, he can't breathe, he's dying, get off his neck, yelling all these obscenities to the law enforcement officer. And then of course you have the backup units that are standing around, not intervening.
Correct.
And then you have, I won't even call his name, but he's on Mr. Floyd's neck. What I saw, and I think it's the most dangerous thing with anybody in authority, and this is exactly why Nina's correct. We have to be held to a higher level of accountability.
Yes.
When we mess things up, we should feel the wrath of the community. We should. Even if I wasn't directly involved. I know when things jack up in other places, that I understand that I'm going to feel that because people are angry. This is why accountability is important, because when he sat on his neck, what I saw was a man, in my opinion, that said, I'm going to show you all who I am. I'm authority. I can stay here as long as I want. I believe in his mind, he probably wanted to get up. But because they were antagonizing him, he made a point. I'm going to show you all who I am. The guy's on the ground in handcuffs.
He's
on handcuffs.
Not even
not
resisting.
Moving. Get off his neck. It's ridiculous. And yes, there is a process, and I get the process, but sometimes even as law enforcement, in my mind, with some things, and I know that a lot of my peers and counterparts agree with me, some things are just clear cut and dry. I somewhat wish he can skip a trial and go straight to the prison. I'm just being honest, because that was pathetic, and it destroys relationships. It causes us to have a setback. The people like myself and the thousands of others that are doing a great job, Nina's correct, right? That fear still exists, even if I am the one that's a part of the 99. And it's just a shame, but that's where we are as a country.
Well, I want to thank you for that, because while you were talking, I was having all these aha moments that, we can make that picture about anything. This could have been a man against a man that he had a vendetta against, had nothing to do with him being black. This could be about a crooked cop trying to assert authority, and his ego got the best.
Yes.
But here's the deal. They made it about white against black. And that's what we've bought into. And that's what we believe. And so I appreciate you bringing up other reasons why this could have, because they used to know each other. They also worked together. But here's the deal. Nobody did anything about it. Shame on us. So we saw abuse, and we made it all about that person. And it's so easy for us to point the finger and see the speck in our neighbor's eye when we refuse to look at the plank in ours. I think someone very special said that a long time ago, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay. So Winston, you're just like shaking your head. It's like, okay. So, but that is so important, that this is why I started I Am 99, because we're watching all this devastation and we're doing nothing about it. For me, it's returning back to God and God's word. For you, it might be something else. And I want to encourage all of you to join us in doing something that is about unity instead of division. But I love that. Thank you so much for opening up my eyes that the media and the people that have the narrative have made it about racism. And
can I
anything. Go ahead.
Lillian, may I add this one thing though?
Absolutely.
Don't get it twisted.
No,
a black male, I can absolutely understand why people that look like me, because every now and then I have to catch myself. I feel a tremendous amount of pain and hurt and agony, because when incidents like that happen, although like Captain Scott mentioned earlier, the statistics prove that there are more blacks that kill cops than, like last year, 2019. That's very true. However, we can't deny the history that we've seen in this country. And there is a wound that is reopened, and it feels like vinegar and salt are being poured into that.
Yeah.
And it brings up some painful moments. I know some very wonderful people here in my community that are activists, that have been through, that have experienced, that have seen. And a lot of times people try to shoot them down for them expressing themselves. And I know she don't mind me saying, there's one beautiful lady in the community. Her name is Frances Oliver, Mrs. Oliver. Very outspoken. She's very loving, though, and has a lot of wonderful history. And she's experienced a lot. And I know that when she sees things that happen like this, it hurts her more than it hurts me, because she's seen it coming up herself.
Yeah.
I'm being told what history was. I've never really experienced the things that a lot of the older generation have experienced, but I got to be able to understand it as a young Black male. And also, it's a shame that many of us don't know our history. And because we don't know it, we walk around like as if everything is always fine and dandy, but that's not the case. And when these wounds become open, they're real, and they hurt, and it devastates us. And this is why we see such an uproar pushing yet for change. So I'll stop there.
No,
Well,
but every time there has been an uproar, it has worked well. You just mentioned Trayvon Martin created a totally different department for your community as well. And so, let's take it and use it for the greater good, as opposed to staying in the pain. And so thank you so much for sharing that. Captain Scott, was there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with that, and that's the key. The wounds are there, but it's very important that we not allow the reopened wounds to kill the whole patient. I am a Black man. I'm the oldest one on this panel.
And happy birthday, by the way.
I drive a red Corvette. Every single day of my life, I am aware that I might be a greater target than somebody who does not look like me. But at the same time, I can look around and see that things have changed. This is not the 1960s. We have progressed. And every time something happens, it opens a wound for me too. I watched the Trayvon Martin situation, and I still don't think justice was served. That hurts me personally. But at the same time, I know that situation, as an example, does not point to some overall conspiracy all over the whole country where every police officer is out to go kill a Black man. See, that's the other extreme, and the media pushes that extreme towards us. We have something happen, so they say, no, it's systemic, and everybody in the world is after you, Black folks. They hate you. The cops are going after you. No. That's not the case. So there's a balance that we have to keep. And as intelligent people, we're able to hopefully let our intellect overrule those emotions.
I'm about to talk. So
I just unmuted you.
Okay. Anyway, I've said enough. Let Nina talk. But
okay.
What Captain Blue said was very, very eloquent. He said,
I know.
I wish I could have said it that well. That was right on time.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, Nina, it's your turn.
I wanted to address statistics. I did really well in statistics. It's something I'm weirdly good at. And I know that statistics are fun little tools that we can use to point to certain ideas or concepts or theories that we'd like to be true. But what statistics don't always do is record those outliers. Just recently, we had an incident, this past week in Aurora, where a family was placed face down. Children were handcuffed. The police were looking for a motorcycle, but they pulled over a minivan with 2 mothers and 4 children. These things don't get in the statistics. The things that go, I think an 8-year-old was arrested for having a temper tantrum and taken to a facility, a detention facility. these things don't always hit the statistics, don't always get into the statistics. The stop and frisk, how many times, and I've said this before, are Black bodies humiliated, demeaned, expected to give answers to questions that they shouldn't even be confronted with. These things don't make the statistics. And while we say, and I think it's very simplistic to say, oh, cops are out to get you, they're going to shoot you. It's not even about being shot sometimes. It's about the humiliation. It's about the molestation and, of just the body, of being harassed, of being questioned. You get pulled over, like you're saying, you're in a Black man in a Corvette. Having the fear of being pulled over just because you're a Black man in a Corvette, even if it's, in the back of your mind, you have to be conscious of that possibility. And it's a narrative that I think is just unfair to all brown and Black people, that we're just afraid of the cops killing us. No, I don't want to have, and just in Orlando this past week, a woman was, yelling out racial slurs. She was arrested. I don't want to live in a world where my true fears of even just of agitation, my rights are constantly threatened, even if it's minutely, just because of the color of my skin. Mm-hmm. And that is also what this movement is born out of, what we're seeing a lot of. It's like I keep saying, it's simplistic just to say it's Black, cops are out to get you. Most people don't believe that, cops are out to get you, but a lot of Black people, a lot of Black men have experienced, I can't walk down Fifth Avenue and, not get stopped. And if I speak back like, hey, what gets recorded often are those incidences where people say, I'm tired, like Sandra Bland. I don't know, I can't imagine the frustration that she was under to be at that point to where she's having that conflict with that officer. I imagine how many times she's had to stop and explain herself. She's being pulled over for pulling over the side to allow him to pass. And now she's having this confrontation and now she's dead. These incidents shouldn't happen. And they say more Black people than white, or more white people than Black people are killed by cops. My thing is, if y'all are okay with it, that's your decision. If the white, but this community has made a decision and are standing up and say, hey, we're holding you accountable. It's going to make some of you uncomfortable. You all are going to make it about simply Black and white. It is more than Black and white. It is about accountability as well. Mm-hmm. And it does come under the umbrella of racism, but we have to also remember who placed that there first. It wasn't the Black community that said, we're going to be this downtrodden and oppressed people, and we're going to wear this badge. It was kind of given to us with slave codes, with slavery, with segregation, with redlining, with bus bombings, church bombings, all of these incidences that have, and we can't just place them in the past and say that was my grandmother. This is our history. Just as the 4th of July, we celebrate the 4th of July every year. That is a source of pride. That is something we can carry with us. You can't just abandon the bad and only celebrate the good, especially when you see that some of the scars of our history are still playing out. It's not so much that when we see these things, it opens a wound. It's so much that it is perpetuating the wound that has not even received any ointment. Mm-hmm. There are scars that have not even begun to heal because all communities haven't even acknowledged the pain that has been perpetuated on the community in the first place. It's not just the community reacting, it is the reaction of other people on the other side of the aisle that will not even acknowledge that pain is rightfully there and exists. And I think that is what's most frustrating to me as a Black American and a lot of other Americans, is that when we speak out, it's looked at as, oh, you're upset because of this one incident and look at what happened in this incident and we can explain this incident away. Okay, but what about everything else? What about, not just what my grandmother went through, what about what I went through? The the racism that I experienced growing up as the only Black student. I was spit on, and if I spit back on a child, I would be punished, even if the whole incident took place in front of the teacher. These are the things that I grew up with. And these are things that many other Black Americans are dealing with. And they don't even get that kind of recognition or acknowledgement that those incidences impact how we interact with our entire community. And when you just say, hey, it's better now, look, it's better now. It's better now, great. Mr. Winston can see that it's better, but my point of reference is only from 1982 going forward. And I can only tell you that I see things that I'm unhappy with and that I can't abide by.
Well,
I don't think anybody is saying you should be happy with it. I think what we're saying, at least what I'm trying to say is everything you said is true, and I agree with that. And I've gone through some things like that. I've gone through worse things than you have. But at the same time, I'm not going to deny that things have improved. I'm not going to paint everybody with a broad brush in saying that if you don't come out in
March
and March and all that, then you don't think anything bad is going on. Of course, there's bad things are going on. And we need to address them, but at the same time, we need to acknowledge that people who are addressing them are of all colors and races, and so the old, things have changed. They're not perfect, but they've gotten better. And just because you don't, like I said, don't march or set buildings on fire doesn't mean that you're going to understand what's going on, appreciate the negative, what's going on, and realize that we need to move forward. We need to move forward. We need to remember our history, but we don't need to keep repeating and reliving our history. We need to remember it so that we don't repeat it. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So,
I agree.
It's good conversation. I
absolutely
appreciate
agree.
what you're saying.
I agree, and I'm just saying that there's, and as you're saying that the Black America is as diverse as any other cultural region, and there are people from, the spectrum of burn the building down to peacefully marching, and there's people all the way in between. And I don't think it's either march or you're against us.
Exactly.
I don't think that's and I hope that's not the narrative that I've received, because I know there are plenty of people who are not going to necessarily march, but still support the movement in other ways.
Okay, so this is where Ho'oponopono just, can touch and melt each other's hearts. And it's a prayer from Hawaii that has helped heal from afar, where you don't even have to have that conversation. Sometimes we can't have these conversations because there's so much emotion. And so what I want to say, first of all, as a Hispanic woman who was born in the United States and has lived in, was born in Florida, who has lived in the United States, I can't say that I've experienced any of that. Maybe I did, but I didn't even notice it because I wasn't looking for it. Maybe I didn't, and I just was lucky. But regardless of it, we are all individuals we have pain, and it doesn't matter where the pain is coming from. But what this prayer does is that it promotes healing for the person who's saying the prayer and the person who's receiving the prayer. So if we were to say a prayer for the healing of the Black community, or the healing of being able to have this conversation, and I want to say to Winston and to Cornelius and to Nina, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this has happened to you. Please forgive me and my part that I have caused your pain. And if you accept my forgiveness, or when you accept my forgiveness, thank you, because I love you. Those are the 4 statements that will start the healing of ourselves so that we can start closing these wounds. Because as I'm hearing you share, Nina, no one should be spat at. No one should experience this. That has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the person who perpetrated those actions. That individual is sick. You know, the person who is committing these crimes, regardless of if it's a bombing at the in Orlando that we had the gay. I'm trying to remember the name of the club.
Pulse, the Pulse nightclub.
Pulse nightclub. The man who acted as the gunman, you know, he was sick. Although he came across as being of certain religion, not all people in that religion would do that. Not all police officers would sit on somebody's neck. Not all white people would spit on. And I can't even imagine doing that to anybody. Not all. And so we need to start looking for commonality and saying, we need to start the healing process. What can I do to help you heal? That's the question that I am asking. What can I do to help you heal?
I think it just comes down to listening. And these conversations are very, and if you know, it's very important because, I mean, you have to listen as well. And I'm not always the best listener, but I have tried today. I hope Captain Scott doesn't feel like I attacked him or anything like that. It's just important to listen. And I don't think anyone was necessarily looking for an apology from Lillian McDermott, but I understand what you mean when you're saying you apologize. And you know, the people always talk about the healing of the Black community. I would like to even discuss the healing of the white community, because you have members in your community that are and will continue to perpetuate racist behavior, whether they consider themselves racist or not. And it's a lot of focus on the Black community and how the Black community needs to heal and change and things, you know, what I think are somewhat tropes, Black on Black crime. There's white on white crime. There's white on white issue or white issues involving Black and white, you know, issues where the healing could happen on that side of the aisle as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. And I'll let that be, Nina, that because I know that all of you have, I mean, it's Winston's birthday today. Thank you so much, Winston, for being a part of this conversation. You could have been anywhere in the world celebrating your birthday, driving with the convertible top or the top down and your red Corvette, but you're here. And I am so touched by all of you. I hear you. I feel you. I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry for my part in any of this, and for anybody's part in this. And I hope that this is going to start the healing conversation for all. So, final word, Winston, would you like to share anything before we go?
No, just thanks again for this conversation. You certainly don't owe anybody an apology. We owe you a debt of thanks for hosting this conversation. We in all communities all over the world need to have more conversations like this, where we open up and we converse with each other and we listen to each other, because only through listening and understanding can we come together.
Thank you. And acknowledgement too, just acknowledging your pain. I mean, well, I know that when I'm upset and somebody acknowledges my pain, they don't have to agree with me. That's the beauty of, that is the myth about acknowledgement. The myth about acknowledgement is that if I agree, if I say I'm sorry, or if I tell you I understand, that somehow I agree with you. No, I understand your pain. And we can just acknowledge, I am sorry, I understand. And right there, that diffuses so much pain and so much anger. So thank you so much, Winston, for that. Appreciate it. Okay, Captain Cornelius Blue, you get the final word now before we go.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure to conversate with everyone. I do want to say this, and I think it's extremely dangerous, and I know exactly where you're coming from as far as understanding. I think it's extremely dangerous to say that we understand, but acknowledge, absolutely yes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why I say that. In a grieving process, when you lose a loved one, people, at funeral celebrations oftentimes say, I understand your grief. Everybody deals with grief different.
Correct.
My brother passed unexpectedly in 2012. I never had just an outburst moment where I cried or I really let things out. And later I did. In fact, like it took like a year almost where I had a moment and the grief became a little bit better to deal with. And people say they understand because they may have lost a brother, but everybody deals with things differently.
Mm-hmm.
So acknowledge and give me time and ability to get to a place in my mind that I feel like I'm ready. Be patient with me. And I think we have to, as a people, learn to respect and be patient with each other and understand that just because it's not a big deal to you, or you're saying get over it, or what's taking you so long, get over the marriage, the breakup, get over whatever, it'll be okay. It's okay for you to say that when you're not dealing with it at the time,
Mm-hmm.
or because you perhaps had more assistance or whatever else the case may be to get through it. But be patient with me until I experience or have the experience that you're experiencing, because this is real to me right now. I thank you for this opportunity, this moment, because this is needed. These conversations need to continue. And, we have a long ways to go, but we're heading in the right direction. I'm very optimistic that we're heading in the right direction. And I'm proud to be a part of the solution.
Well, thank you to all. You guys have touched me in so many different ways. I hope that you, my viewing friends that are listening to this conversation can encourage the people and acknowledge that there is pain and there is hurt. Don't need to agree. You don't need to understand. Just acknowledge the pain. And that will be the start of the softening and the healing and all the conversations that can come forward towards resolution as opposed to dividing. So thank you today for all of you that are joining us. We've got Yvonne from Malaysia. Thank you so much for joining us. All the love and kisses and good wishes for your anniversary.